That's a really difficult one, going into retirement. Move into a care home or spend the rest of my days travelling around the world on cruise ships. Yeah, quite a bit of a conundrum. Hello everybody and welcome to This Upbeat Life, the show where we take a light-hearted look at life and go on a journey to find out how people stay physically and mentally happy. I'm Simon JJ Green and I'll be interviewing ordinary, bog-standard people as well as looking at the latest in wellness, health science, nature and the quirkier side of the health and wellbeing industry. Now, let's get cracking with today's episode. And on quick news, how much coffee is too much coffee in a day? Well, hello and welcome back to This Upbeat Life, episode 23, the bi-weekly wellness reality check with me, Simon JJ Green, where we look at trending health habits and gently ask, are we doing this because it's good for us or because a sweaty 21-year-old on TikTok did it while wearing matching 1980s leg warmers? Now, I think we need to talk about the absolute chokehold the coffee's got on the internet at the moment. If you're anything like me, then you'll need a good strong cup of coffee in the morning to push your happiness buttons and wipe the condescending, sarcastic smirk off your face as you walk into the office. Now, historically as a nation, Britain was fueled entirely by lukewarm PG tips, lumpy milk, rich tea biscuits and sarcasm. But lately, our social media feeds have decided that coffee isn't just a morning tonic anymore. No, it's become a holy elixir, a personality trait. It's a wellness cult. And depending on which side of the algorithm you land on today, your morning cup is either the key to immortality or you're doomed. So let's separate the actual science from the absolute social media slop. I'll start with the good news because God knows we need it. If you are currently clutching a mug like it's the only thing keeping you tethered to this mortal realm, rejoice. The actual scientific community generally agrees that moderate coffee drinking is actually quite awesome for you. But what does a moderate habit look like, you may ask? And that's a good question because I have a feeling that my moderate habit is going to be different to what anybody else's moderate habit. Well, researchers say that people who drink zero coffee get fewer health protections and people who drink more than 5 cups a day see increased health risks. So, the 3 to 5 cup zone is the sweet spot where the statistical risk of type 2 diabetes, heart disease and cognitive decline drops to its lowest levels. I'm in trouble. When you drink coffee, you aren't just consuming liquid anxiety, you are taking in a massive, beautiful dose of antioxidants and polyphenols. Population studies show that a regular, moderate habit can slash your risk of type 2 diabetes, stroke and fatty liver disease. Essentially, your morning brew acts like a tiny caffeinated bouncer for your internal organs, kicking out the bad guys. But of course, the internet couldn't just leave it at that, could they? No, because a standard cup of black coffee doesn't get views. Enter stage left, the TikTok alchemists who like to mess it all up for everyone. So let's talk about bulletproof coffee, for example. This is the trend where you take a perfectly good cup of normal coffee and drop in a massive dollop of grass-fed butter and coconut oil into it before whizzing it up with a milk frother until it looks like a swamp. And what does our internet content creators claim? They say it optimizes your brain's bioavailability and it boosts fat burning. And the biological reality, you're just drinking liquid butter. It tastes like an oily cinema floor and contains enough saturated fat to give your cardiologist a mild panic attack. Unless you are actively trying to survive an expedition across the Antarctic tundra, there is absolutely no reason to start your Monday morning by drinking half a block of Country Life butter and assembling your Huskies. And then because the internet never sleeps, mostly due to all the caffeine, I think, we've got Proffee, for goodness sake, which is protein coffee, of course. This is where people dump an entire bottle of synthetic vanilla-flavoured protein shake directly into a double shot of espresso. TikTok influencers swear that this is the ultimate wellness hack for busy people. In reality, it looks like curdled beige sadness and tastes like liquid chalk. Your body can only absorb so much protein at once, guys. You aren't maximising your gains, you're just ruining a perfectly good espresso and guaranteeing yourself an incredibly stressful trip to the loo before midday. Now, if you strip away the butter and the protein powder, there is one genuine health plot twist that the wellness gurus love to hyperventilate over, and it comes down to how you brew it. It turns out that coffee beans contain natural oils called diterpenes or diterpenes. I think it's diterpenes. Specifically one called cafestol. If you're using an unfiltered method, for example, like a French press, a cafetiere, or a fancy espresso machine, these oils pass straight through into your mug. Once inside you, cafestol whispers sweet nothings to your liver, telling it to stop regulating your LDL, which is your bad cholesterol. Now, a massive real-world study tracking 500,000 people actually linked heavy consumption of unfiltered coffee to higher rates of heart disease. So if you're drinking 4 cafetières a day just to survive your office job, your arteries might currently look like the M25 on a bank holiday Friday. But before you hide your cafetière in a cupboard, the fix is embarrassingly simple. A humble paper filter. Drip coffee makers, pour-overs, or even a cheap AeroPress with a paper disc physically trap these oily villains. Filtered coffee is so benign, it's practically a salad. But what about instant coffee, the absolute pinnacle of British convenience? Now, online coffee snobs will try and tell you that a spoonful of Nescafe Gold blend is toxic sludge. But science says otherwise. Instant coffee is literally just brewed coffee that has been dehydrated. Because it's industrially filtered during manufacturing, it has 0 cholesterol-raising oils. It also has less caffeine, making it a great choice, especially if a high-street triple-shot latte is strong enough to raise the dead and makes your heart beat like a techno song. Yes, instant coffee has a slightly higher levels of a chemical called acrylamide, but health bodies like the European Food Safety Authority, they're the good guys, right? Emphasize that the levels are incredibly low. You would have to drink about 100 cups of Nescafe a day for it to do you any harm, at which point the acrylamide is probably the least of your problems because you will have already vibrated through a wall. So what's the verdict here on this upbeat life? Well, I think that you do not need to overcomplicate your morning. You don't need to blend your drinks with collagen or mushroom powder or drink it out of a mason jar while staring directly into the sun so you can align your chakras. It's simple. If you want the maximum health benefits with the lowest risk, use a paper filter. Keep it to under 4 cups a day. Hang on a minute. That's going to be hard. And maybe don't dump half a pint of sugary syrup or a knob of butter into it. Just drink it, wake up, and try and be nice to people. On The Real Deal, forget the care home, I'm off to the Caribbean. Right then. Actually, is it Caribbean? Caribbean. Right then, quick question. When you retire, do you picture yourself in a nice little bungalow, a retirement village, or somewhere with unlimited profiteroles and a captain wearing more stripes than a zebra crossing? Because, listeners, believe it or not, some people have looked at the cost of growing old and then looked at the cost of living on a cruise ship and said, you know what? I'll have a cabin 836 with a sea view, tar. Really, can you imagine the grandchildren asking, where's Grandad? He's somewhere between Madeira and Malaga. Now, I know what you're thinking. Cruises, they're expensive, surely. Well, not always, apparently. Now, back in 2004, researchers in America actually crunched the numbers and they concluded that for healthy, older adults who don't need intensive nursing care, living on a cruise ship could cost about the same as assisted living, and in some cases offer a better quality of life, which is quite a sentence, isn't it? Science has basically said, have you considered growing old somewhere with a chocolate fountain and a 24-hour buffet? And then we fast forward to today, and people are actually doing it. Some retirees book cruise after cruise after cruise, spending months at sea, sometimes years. One American couple worked out it was cheaper to live permanently on cruise ships than to stay in their own home. And that's right, their retirement plan involves selling their house and replacing it with whichever floating hotel happened to be leaving port on Thursday. So let's sit back on our metaphorical sun loungers and think about what you actually get. Somebody makes your bed. Somebody cooks your breakfast, your lunch, and your dinner. Your towels magically become swans. Your room tidies itself. There's live music. There's comedy, there's theatre, there's swimming pools, there's dance classes, quizzes, bingo, fitness instructors who smile way too much before 7 a.m. Meanwhile, back on land, a lot of retirement communities charge separately for their meals, for the cleaning, for activities, laundry and transport. And before you know it, you'll be paying extra to have an additional toilet roll. And of course, that's not true everywhere. But once all the bills are added together, living at sea doesn't always look quite so bonkers. And of course, there's loneliness. Millions of older people suffer from it. And cruise ships are basically floating villages. Every day there are people chatting over breakfast, people dancing, not while eating their Frosties, people doing quizzes, going bowling and the cinema. Friendships happen naturally because you're surrounded by people, like it or not. And of course, we can't pretend it's perfect. Your cabin isn't exactly Buckingham Palace, no room to swing a mosquito, let alone a cat. Storage space, let's just say that the phrase travel light was invented for cruises. And you do spend long periods away from your family. But some parents of adult children might be quietly thinking, that's not exactly a downside. But what about healthcare? Yep, this is the big one. Yes, cruise ships do have doctors who can deal with everyday illnesses and emergencies, but they're not care homes. If someone develops dementia or needs around-the-clock nursing, the maths and the practicality change very quickly. A Band-Aid and an aspirin can't replace specialist medical care. And then there are the hidden costs, obviously. Wi-Fi, because apparently it's easier to communicate with astronauts than download an email in the middle of the Atlantic. And then there's drinks, laundry, excursions, gratuities. And here's another thing that I found out. You don't actually live on the one ship for the rest of your days. No. Ships go into dry dock, routes change, schedules are reshuffled, so you're constantly moving house. But some companies have tried selling permanent apartments on cruise ships. Yes, the idea is incredible. Buy your home and sail around the world indefinitely, although several of these projects have hit financial icebergs before leaving harbour. So, is it actually cheaper than living in a care home? Well, sometimes if you're healthy and can live independently, you love travelling and were already thinking about downsizing, it can genuinely make financial sense. Especially when you go cruising, most cabins are sold as a double occupancy. So it's just as cheap to go with two of you as it is with one, especially compared to some expensive retirement communities. If, however, you need specialist nursing or a regular hospital appointment or complex medical care, a cruise ship simply isn't built for that because it's a holiday. But I have to admit, I do rather like the idea. Growing old doesn't have to mean your world gets smaller. Maybe it just gets bigger. Maybe retirement isn't about slowing down. Maybe it's about finally seeing all those places you promised yourself you'd visit. Imagine waking up tomorrow, opening the curtains, and instead of looking at next door's wheelie bins, you're looking at Venice, or Dubrovnik, or a glacier, or dolphins racing alongside the ship. Not bad for a Tuesday. And if anyone asks where you've retired, you can simply smile and say, I haven't retired, I've just become difficult to find. Of course, I could not live out my days on a cruise ship unless they design one that can take a bunch of old wrinklies and their dogs. And then I'll be there like a shot. Now, when I was researching this article, I did my due diligence and went to the veritable cesspit of all knowledge, Reddit, and asked the denizens lurking there what they thought. Was any of this true? Had anyone out there actually done this and gone and lived full-time on a cruise ship? And yes, it is true. I received over 100 replies, mostly saying it was a false economy and that there was a lot of hassle involved. But to be fair, judging from the replies, I think that 90% of the answers were from our American cousins. I'm going to read out a few of the answers because it's quite entertaining. So someone says, yes, it's done. Based on what we spend a week, we cruise 10 to 12 weeks a year. One person could cruise full-time for about $60,000 a year. When you realise you don't have rent, utilities, car payments, car or homeowners, renters, insurance, food costs, entertainment costs, HOAs, etc., it's actually not a bad deal at all. And then Dis Cruise Lover says, I've done the math and using a line like Royal Caribbean, you'd be paying a ballpark figure of around $88,000 a year. Oh, another one says, it's true. It's not expensive at all if you know how to plan it. One of my favourite YouTube channels is a woman who lives on them full-time. She's talking me into it. And for those interested in the channel, it's called From Poverty to Paradise. Another person says, this is true, but you will not receive the level of care living on a cruise ship that you would in a normal care facility, vultures notwithstanding. The cruise ship responsibilities are limited to cleaning your room and providing meals. Nobody will monitor your medication, contact your children if you have a health problem, help get you to a medical appointment other than the onboard infirmary, or take you shopping, etc. I think a more realistic comparison to a living on a cruise ship in this context is the cost of living in your own apartment as you age. Now, I've heard the same, someone says, especially if someone doesn't have significant other anymore. I'd do it 100%. There'd be no house maintenance or anything related to owning a home. Never any dishes to do. It's always winning. Always have enough entertainment. Always meeting new people and going to new destinations. I couldn't think of anything better. And finally, Peter303 says, the entertainment might get tiresome. The 2 to 4 entertainment groups repeat their offerings on a weekly basis for the several months of the duration of their contracts. And then poured my foots out replies with, not if you've got dementia. Yeah, on far out stuff, the raw milk debate. Now, if you're in the UK, you're probably wondering what on earth I'm talking about. But if you're in the US, then this is a hot topic. Yes, Got Milk, America's latest culture war comes straight from the cow. You know you've run out of things to argue about when milk becomes controversial. Not oat milk, not almond milk, no, just good old-fashioned cow's milk. Except this time, it hasn't been pasteurised. Welcome to the Great American Raw Milk Row, where a bottle of milk has somehow become the equivalent of choosing a football team, a political party, and a religion, all before breakfast. Supporters say that raw milk is more natural, tastes better, and contains beneficial bacteria and enzymes. While critics say, yes, but it can also contain bacteria that spend their weekends trying to make your digestive system regret every life choice you've ever made. So, who's right? Well, here's where it gets interesting. The scientific consensus is pretty clear. Pasteurizing milk kills harmful bugs such as E. coli, Salmonella, Campylobacter and Listeria, while leaving almost all of the nutrition intact. Health experts say that there's no convincing evidence that raw milk offers health benefits big enough to outweigh the risk. But of course, that's only half the story, because if you looked at the headlines, you'd think America were the first people to invent the idea of drinking milk raw. Well, they haven't, not even close. No. Across parts of France, Italy, Germany, Austria and Switzerland, people have been buying raw milk for years. In some villages, you can wander up to a vending machine, pop in a couple of euros and fill a bottle. Over here in the UK, raw milk is perfectly legal too, just very regulated and generally sold directly from licensed farms. It's a niche product rather than the nation's latest personality test. Meanwhile, in countries like India and Africa, families have traditionally collected fresh milk from their own cows for generations. Now, if you head over into Mongolia and Central Asia, you'll discover fermented mare's milk. Yes, that's from a horse, which has been enjoyed for hundreds of years. I'm not sure about the enjoyed bit. I have travelled across Mongolia in the 1980s and had some of this milk called airag or kumis, and I definitely didn't enjoy it. Anyway, the point is people around the world have been getting their milk in all sorts of ways long before Instagram discovered mason jars. But why has America made such a song and dance about it? And partly because it's become wrapped up in something much bigger than milk. For some, it's about eating naturally. For others, it's about supporting local farmers. But for others, still, it has become a symbol of personal freedom or resistance, whichever way you want to see it. You don't tell me what I can pour on my cornflakes sort of thing. And then throw social media into the mix, add a few wellness influencers, sprinkle liberally with podcasts, YouTube videos and hot takes, and suddenly you've got what can only be described as dairy drama. And then along came bird flu in American dairy cattle, and health officials urged people not to drink raw milk because infected cows could shed the virus into unpasteurized milk. That poured another bucket of cream onto an already simmering argument. Here we are. A civilization that landed people on the moon is now locked in passionate debate over whether milk should have a quick heat treatment before it reaches your fridge. But surely sometimes milk is just milk. And it seems to be the latest reminder that if there's a way for humans to turn something utterly ordinary into a full-blown international argument, we're going to find it. Now then, who's ready to start a row about whether jam or cream goes on the scone first? And that's it for today. Thanks for listening, everybody. As always, I'd appreciate it if you could like, follow, and subscribe to my show, This Upbeat Life, so I know I'm on the right track. And even better, leave a review and share it with your friends. Until next time, remember, happiness is the best medicine. Cheerio.